I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. We're starting off tonight with a look at how the wheels of justice turn slowly, but they do turn. More than 2 years ago, a mob attacked the U.S. Capitol building. A few of those people were from our area. One of them made a plea in federal court today, and that is our big story. Since that fateful day in January 2021, nearly 1,000 people have been arrested nationwide and charged with various crimes involved in the attempted insurrection. The Justice Department reports that more than half those defendants have already pleaded guilty. Add a battleground man to that list. Here's our Kyle Iboshi.
A battleground man who took selfie-style photos with his son during the Capitol riot pleaded guilty to a single count of entering and remaining in a restricted building. He'll be sentenced in August. Jeff Grace admitted he and his son Jeremy Grace went to Washington, D.C. in January of 2021 to attend a rally in support of President Donald Trump. Court records indicate they traveled and stayed at a hotel with a member of the Proud Boys. On January 6th, the father and son joined with a large group of Proud Boys at the Washington Monument before walking toward the U.S. Capitol building, according to federal investigators. Photos and videos show the duo just a few feet behind the front line of protesters who pushed past officers protecting the Capitol. Images show Grace entering the U.S. Capitol building and then watching another rioter attempt to steal a congressional lectern.
There was a photo that was widely circulated, and the suggestion is that that's you behind this gentleman. Is that you?
Yes.
In a March 2021 interview with KGW, Jeff Grace admitted he broke the law.
Why did you enter the Capitol building?
You know, I really don't know. To be honest, I don't know. I had no intention of it. And I don't want to say swept up by the crowd or swept up by my heart or swept up by this. I don't really have an answer for that.
During that same interview, Grace denied his son Jeremy entered the building.
He didn't go in the Capitol.
And Grace falsely claimed he didn't take any photos or video.
Did you take any photos or video when you were there?
Nope.
Court records would prove otherwise. Jeff and Jeremy Grace can be seen posing together in photos and video inside and outside the U.S. Capitol during the insurrection. Federal agents claim both men tried to delete the selfie-style videos. A couple months after his arrest, a federal judge ordered Jeff Grace surrender any guns and weapons while awaiting trial after he showed up armed during what prosecutors described as pre-planned confrontations in both Portland and El Paso, Texas. Grace posted videos on YouTube and social media complaining the Justice Department treated him unfairly, and he sold shirts online displaying the U.S. Capitol with the phrase "Our House" boldly printed on the front. Grace's son was sentenced last July after accepting a similar plea deal with prosecutors. Jeremy Grace got 21 days in prison and supervised release. 9 people from Oregon and Southwest Washington were charged in relation to the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Of those, 4 have pleaded guilty, including Jeff and Jeremy Grace. A federal judge sentenced Jeffrey Hubbard of Lincoln City to 45 days in prison and 3 years of probation after pleading guilty to 1 count of parading, demonstrating, or picketing in a Capitol building. Lilith Sayer of Portland also pleaded guilty for her role in the January 6th insurrection. She will be sentenced in federal court on Tuesday.
Kyle joins me now. Super interesting story. Is that guy Jeff Grace still posting on social media?
No. So the social media accounts where he was speaking out against the government, those have largely come down, as has the website where he was selling all kinds of merchandise and hats under the label Our House. That doesn't exist anymore.
Nice. Do you think he feels bad about all this?
Tough to say. He did admit his guilt in front of a judge today. Now, what will be interesting is sentencing, which comes in August, because oftentimes defendant comes before a judge at that point, admit what they did is wrong and why, and they're sorry, that type of thing. So we'll see when sentencing occurs in August.
And what about, I know there's a number of cases, maybe 9 people have been charged at some level.
Right.
What are the status of those?
Yeah, so 4 of them have pleaded guilty at this point. The rest of them we'll see. The process has been obviously quite slow, but I anticipate in many of these cases, as we've seen across the board, They'll end in plea deals in all likelihood.
Okay, and maybe jail time?
Possibly. It's been interesting, to be honest with you. Some of those who just entered the Capitol during the insurrection, they're not getting jail time. Those who maybe confronted the officers or lied about their behaviors, they seem to be getting some jail time.
All right, we'll be watching. It'll be interesting. Thank you, Kyle. Great stuff as always. Now let's talk some more about the Greater Idaho movement that we profiled all last week during our Eastern Oregon listening tour. Many Oregonians living in rural parts of the state are frustrated. They're feeling unheard in the halls of the Capitol in Salem. It begs the question, what can be done to make things better? Should anything be done? Some of you have suggested Oregon Governor Tina Kotek go on a listening tour like we did to really hear what people have to say. Oregon's former U.S. Attorney Billy Williams agrees with you. He did that very thing after the takeover of the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge by anti-government protesters back in 2016.
People have a need to be heard and understood, and they need to have that front and center in person, right? And so I really think there's an opportunity here for, again, Governor Kotek and her leadership team to just take it on. I mean, the way you go about doing it is you reach out to leadership in rural communities and you set up meetings and you show up, you listen.
Now, the governor's office has told us in the past that she is thinking about visiting Eastern Oregon. For the past several weeks, we've been asking when that's going to happen. Her office today told us, we really don't know. The timing's kind of up in the air. We'll get back to you. And then we said, well, great. Okay, but we did these interviews and we heard from people in Eastern Oregon and we heard a lot from our viewers. We'd love to talk to the governor about all of it. And they said, no, the governor's not going to talk to you about that. So there's that. Now, we do not think the Greater Idaho movement is a joke, by the way. The people behind it are very serious, and it's a heartfelt thing. At the same time, I really don't think it's ever going to happen. The Idaho border is not going to move and cover much of Oregon. But the Greater Idaho movement will be on the ballot in a 12th Oregon county now. It's going to happen next month. Wallowa County voters will decide whether or not to begin border relocation discussions. Back in 2020, they voted on this very thing, and it failed by less than 1%. So it is back now. And as our Janelle Finch from our sister station in Spokane found out, county residents there are still split on the question.
Greater Idaho. It's an idea that has Wallowa County, Oregon, divided.
People wish it would happen.
I want it just to stay Oregon.
It's safe to say
It's a mixed bag here.
May, Wallowa County voters will see a familiar item on their ballots. Should county commissioners discuss relocating the border? People in favor say voting yes is voting to be heard. That's what Mark Stouffer believes. He's lived in Oregon all his life.
I grew up in Medford, Central Point.
Today, he owns a refurbishery in Enterprise, one of the largest cities in Wallowa County. He says he's always noticed a sort of state instability while living in Oregon.
It started when I was a young person. Southern Oregon and Northern California at that time were looking at separating themselves, and that was in the 70s.
He says Southern Californians changed what he knew and loved about where he grew up.
Lots of orchards, lots of farm fields. I grew up in FFA, and we watched it all suddenly go away as these people moved in and they tore the orchards out.
When it came to getting support from state leaders, Stouffer says no one listened.
Salem, the legislature, they didn't really hear what we were hollering, raising our hands and saying, we have a problem here, and they wouldn't hear it.
He says feelings of neglect return when thinking about the deepening divide in Oregon.
Based on my experience, we don't have a lot in common. Yes, we're Oregonians, but there's this unwillingness anymore for the metro area to listen to us.
He says he's tracked rural Oregon's efforts to be recognized. In 2004, an executive order created the Office of Rural Policy
to help the legislature and agencies that write rules understand rural Oregon.
4 years later, state leaders discontinued funding the office.
It was dropped, and they did a final report and handed it to the governor and the legislature, and I think it's probably sitting on a shelf somewhere.
Joining Idaho isn't the way he'd like to solve the divide.
We would rather work it out and make it work for one Oregon.
But right now, He says it makes the most sense.
The same kind of emotions that a person might feel in a marriage situation when it's breaking up are a lot of the emotions that we're feeling.
So Stouffer has been backing the movement, which has gained momentum in recent years. The organization says 11 Oregon counties have voted in favor of local officials discussing Greater Idaho. Those against say they hope Wallowa County won't be number 12.
I just don't like the idea. It's a political movement to try to gain more votes for the Republican side in the state.
Some say giving up their piece of Oregon to Idaho is like giving up a piece of their identities.
I was born in Oregon. I'm 66 and I'd like it to stay Oregon. I have no idea of moving to Idaho.
You don't want to take the wonder out of the Pacific Wonderland. Idaho's got their thing, we've got ours. Let's keep it that way.
Although the county may be divided on whether or not they support the idea, there is one thing they can't agree on. The reality of this could take a long, long time.
I think it's a real good idea, but I'm 84 years old and I don't expect to see that done in my lifetime.
As we explained several times last week, the chances of this actually happening are astronomically small. Yes, there's a bill to get things going in the Idaho legislature, and it passed one side of the House there in the legislature, but seemingly dead on the other side. In Oregon, there's also a bill supporting the idea, but it's also dead. And nothing will happen until both legislatures agree and pass a bill, and both governors sign off on the bill, which is not going to happen. And then Congress would have to approve it, which really is not going to happen. But the fact that counties have voted to start talking about it should say enough to the governor and urban lawmakers. It's time to listen and find ways to heal the divide. As for Wallowa County, we'll be watching next month to see if they become the 12th county to start Greater Idaho talks. And if you missed any of our Greater Idaho series, you can watch them right now on our streaming YouTube channel or also on our KGW Plus channel. It can be found on Roku or Amazon Fire. Add it to your homepage so that you can watch segments or full episodes of the story anytime. You can also head to the KGW YouTube channel, as I mentioned, to find our content. It is updated every single weekday. The final COVID mask mandate has now been lifted. You no longer have to wear a mask in most healthcare settings in Oregon, but you'll still need it some places.
If you come in and you have cold symptoms or a cough, that we're going to continue to require that patients wear a mask.
Where you'll need to keep a mask on and what to do if you're not comfortable with your doctor going unmasked. When the story returns. 3 years ago today, the Center for Disease Control issued new guidelines for COVID-19. They recommended all people in the U.S. start wearing a mask whenever we were outside our homes. That was only a few weeks into the pandemic, but it would be several more months until Oregon and Washington instituted their own mask mandates. We've come a long way since then, and today the last mask mandate in both Oregon and Washington was lifted. Now you no longer need to wear a mask in most healthcare settings. Plenty of you are happy about that, like Veronica, who wrote to us to say, "I think it should be left up to the individual. I'm so sick of masks and not being able to see the face of my medical provider. I personally am so ready to throw my masks in the garbage." But don't throw all your masks in the garbage just yet, Veronica. You may still need them for certain situations. We reached out to major healthcare systems in Oregon and Washington to find out whether masks will still be required. If you come in with COVID or cold flu symptoms, then yeah, they're going to ask you to wear a mask. Along with many emergency rooms, and some hospitals are still requiring masks in behavioral health units and maternity wards. You'll also still have to wear a mask in high-risk areas that include areas where cancer patients are being treated, like infusion centers, dialysis units, radiation, and oncology clinics. That sort of all makes sense, doesn't it? It's because those patients are high risk and many are immunocompromised. We heard from one viewer who is nervous about the mandate being dropped for people like her. Jennifer wrote in to say, "Terrified. Absolutely terrified. I'm immunocompromised and handicapped. Now the one place disabled and immunocompromised people have to go and was safe will be anxiety inducing." Well, all the hospital systems that we heard from are still highly recommending that all patients wear masks in all settings. And many of them say that if you, the patient, ask your provider to wear a mask while they're treating you, they will. Here's Terry Dantzler with Portland Urgent Care.
We did have a discussion when we found out this was going to be an option, and we wanted to be sure that all of our patients stayed safe and be respectful of others. So we decided that if you come in and you have cold symptoms or a cough, that we're going to continue to require that patients wear a mask. So to me, that's just common sense now that we've been wearing them for so long and we understand that it does help.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't get a cold last year. I don't know about you. I did get COVID, but I didn't get a cold. Dantzler's hoping that mask wearing when you're sick, both in and out of healthcare settings, becomes more common in the coming years.
It is very common sense to have people wear masks when you're not feeling well, whether you are coming to an urgent care, the hospital, the grocery store. It'd be really nice. It would be really nice to be respectful of other people in their space.
That seems to be something that many people are considering, like Terry, who wrote, "Because of the habit of wearing a mask whenever I am in a large group of people, it's been 3.5 years since I've had a respiratory infection. I like that. I plan to continue wearing a mask whenever I am in a crowd of strangers." What about you? What are you going to do? You're going to continue to wear a mask in certain situations? What questions do you have about mask rules in healthcare? Send us an email. The address is thestory@kgw.com, or leave us a voicemail, 503-226-5090. It's been a deadly past few days in downtown Portland, with at least 3 people dying from drug overdoses and several others needing Narcan. Our Blair Best hit the streets today and found one man who was revived with Narcan, but not long afterwards, he was right back at it, using the very drug that nearly killed him.
Since the overdose, how many times have you smoked thus far?
About 15 to 25 times today, and it's probably not even noon yet.
The corner of downtown that's getting a lot of attention for the crisis that's on full display. Plus, we'll hear from others on that street, with at least one person telling Blair he's happy being a drug addict, when the story continues.
Just ahead on KGW News at 6:30, the man accused of killing his girlfriend and her 7-year-old daughter appears in court to face murder charges. Plus, a warm-up is on the way, though first, some of us might see even more snow. Joe has your full forecast just ahead at 6:30. Hope to see you then.
Welcome back. Let's talk about the homeless crisis and drug addiction in Portland. There were a stunning number of overdoses in downtown Portland over the last few days. Crews have responded to 11 since Friday. And in 3 of those cases, the people who OD'd did not survive. Blair Best spoke with one man who was revived thanks to Narcan, and she tells us the majority of these overdoses happened in one area of downtown that's been a concern for the city and police for weeks.
This corner of Southwest 4th and Washington is in many ways a hub of downtown, and one where the crisis on our streets is on full display. Homeless people show us their scraps of tinfoil used for smoking fentanyl first thing Monday morning. It's also where Portland police responded to at least 11 overdoses since Friday. 3 people died. For others like Nate, it was too close of a call.
It's one of the worst and hardest experiences that I've been through.
He overdosed Sunday night, but police used Narcan to revive him.
Took a really big inhale of fentanyl, and I guess I went out and I just woke up to a bunch of people surrounding me and swarming me, and so I guess I had been Narcan 3 times.
Since the overdose, how many times have you smoked thus far?
About 15 to 25 times today, and it's probably not even noon yet.
He's 22 years old and has been addicted to fentanyl for 6 months. This is what he keeps inside his pockets.
Narcan, foils, pills.
What's that?
They're like the blue pills, the blues. I feel a little bit guilty because I know my mother wants better for me and I wish I could just give it to her.
How badly do you want to get out of this?
Really badly. Like, more than anything, honestly.
So we called an outreach worker at Cielo Treatment Center.
So I've got him here with me. You're on speaker. He's willing to go into detox and get help. Do you want to talk to him really quick?
That'd be me.
Okay, here, I'm gonna keep you on speaker, okay?
Hello?
Here he is.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing alright, bro. How you feeling?
I'm feeling alright, man. I just really need to get help.
Have you been to Hooper before yet?
Yeah, I was at Hooper for a day and then I left.
Why'd you leave? Did you get kicked out? You man?
I just couldn't do it. It was difficult.
Okay.
But like I would gladly go back.
The outreach worker is now trying to get him a bed at Fora Health.
I feel a little bit better. Like I feel like maybe, hopefully, that I'll get the help that I need.
We talked with the mayor's office over the phone, and while they say there's open-air drug use happening all across the city, this site in particular off Southwest 4th in Washington has been a top priority for them for weeks. But the site itself is privately owned, which does present some challenges. So they're in communication with the property owner and police to find ways to secure this building, which includes blocking off alcoves like this one to make it less inviting.
I've been working here 3 months. And already I'm jaded to the fact that they smoke fentanyl outside.
Rex Tanbert works the cash register at Pete's Market, the business Nate overdosed in front of Sunday night.
Because I see it every day, I walk by people, I don't know whether they're dead or alive. People trying to resuscitate them, coming in asking for Narcan.
Do you think the city and police are doing enough to help this crisis?
They're doing all they can. I mean, their hands are tied because it's not illegal.
And on top of all that, there are people like Ryan.
I love this lifestyle. I will never ever take it back for my old lifestyle.
Who simply don't want any help.
Because I don't believe I need to go to treatment. I'm happy being a drug addict.
This building has been cited by the city's Bureau of Development Services 4 times for violating city code for things like camping, human feces, raw food, even broken windows. They plan to re-inspect the building soon. In Southwest Portland, Blair Best, KGW News.
Blair often tries to give us a behind-the-scenes look at her reporting, especially for stories like this one, when she can't include all of the information into one segment. And she tells us today's trip downtown was downright depressing.
All right, so it's pretty rough down here. We've been out on this block for about 2 hours this morning, and I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty depressing talking with these people, hearing their struggle. It smells like urine. We see things on the street we don't necessarily want to see. I mean, it's pretty bad. But one thing I did want to add to this story is that Nate, the boy we featured, he started using fentanyl after He suffered an opioid addiction after being prescribed pain medications from a doctor when he broke his arm. You know, another thing that I want to add is it's not black and white for these people, right? It's really hard for them to stop using drugs. If they stop, they get really sick. A lot of them want services but don't know how to find it, or there's a lack of beds. It's just a whole vicious cycle. But it's not as easy when we're walking down the street and we see people using drugs. It's a sickness, it's an illness, and there needs to be more support for people like that.
All right, thank you, Blair. Hey, keep sending your questions and comments to our address. It's thestory@kgw.com. We're going to wrap things up right after this. Hey, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our story, well, that never ends. I'll see you tomorrow.